Here we go. It's back. It's Monday. It's Monday. Don't be like Mondays are good. Mondays are good. Well, they're nice to kind of get over. I think Mondays. I don't know. I still, even though I'm sort of, I am working full time, but I'm not working full time. I'm not in a 9 to 5 job. Let's put it that way. But Mondays are still. It's Monday. I don't know. Does that ever stop? I mean, I want to know when you get to retirement. Is anybody on here who's retired? I would like to know whether or not you think Mondays are still Mondays, even though you don't have to work. I don't know. Maybe they are. Mondays. I always it's Monday. Even if I haven't got anything particular to do, which is rare, but occasionally I do have a Monday where I don't have anything particular to do, and it's still Monday. I just think Mondays are really bad the other week. Never mind. Anyway, lovely to see you all. JR1988 is here. Commander Terraphobe. Glenn is here. Excellent. Commander Terracop. Wintermute. Alan RP42. Nimdascrin is here as well. And the real distasteful. Excellent. Hello. Good to see you all. It's fantastic to be here. So yes, I did survive the Martian invasion. I did. So I did actually, yes, I had a fabulous birthday actually. As you would expect, I was royally spoiled on Saturday, which was really nice. And I've got a massive big stack load of sweets to get through and a whole bunch of other bits and pieces and some cooking books actually, which will be quite good fun. Glenn says my dad never knows what day it is, but he does say he's busier in retirement than he ever was when he was working. That doesn't sound good, does it? I don't like the sound of that. I want to stop working. I don't want to be busy. I want to sit on the porch. And watch the sun go down, or up, or sideways, or depending which part of the planet I'm on. Matt versus Pixels, hello there. So yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, a lot of people I know who are retired, who seem very very busy, and I'm not sure. This worries me. I have to wait and see. But yeah, no, I did. I survived. He enjoys the work more, I guess. Well, that's good. I mean, if you're enjoying yourself, I think is it work? Depends what you mean by work then, I suppose. Work, i.e. in the physics sense of doing work. He says, now I've just distracted myself from my distraction. In the physics sense of work, that's force and energy or something, I don't know. What's the definition of work? That's activity, I suppose, isn't it? Creating motion and stuff, but that's quite a dry definition of work. I spend a lot of time sat in front of a computer, which I am hoping not to do quite so much when I retire. But if I want to do writing, then I'm in front of a computer again, aren't I? So all that sort of problem. Alan says I am retired. And at the moment, my post-retirement work is in a lull. Even so, I feel different on Mondays than the weekend. There you go. We have it from a genuine retired person. Excellent. I spent a lot of today reading a book. Well, that sounds nice. That sounds very nice. Yeah, I like the sound of that. I think you have to stay busy or retirement is short. So it's your life. Thanks for the cheery thought there. So some may say writing is conducive to sitting on the porch and watching the sun go down as long as you're using a laptop. Yeah, okay, it's got a good battery life. Yeah. Wintermute just says Porsche. I like the way you're thinking there. Excellent. And the odds, J69713PB. You need a better username, my friend. Something I can pronounce quickly. I might just call you J. That takes me like half the stream just to say J691. No, I can't even do it right. J69713PB. Hello, anyway. Krillikov, the odds of being invaded by Mars. Now, actually, the odds. Yes, it was 1,000,000 to 1. Definitely 1,000,000 to 1. Man vs Pixels has subscribed as well. Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. And Commander Shorty is here as well. So yes. Anyway, so it seems that when you retire, Mondays are still Mondays. That's an interesting piece of intel for those of us beginning to approach that stage of life where maybe we're thinking maybe I shouldn't be working quite so hard. J number PB. Yeah, I think that's quite a good suggestion actually. J number PB. Never tell me the odds. No, never tell me the odds. No, I must admit. So anyway, so as many of you will now be aware, I was taken by my lovely family. My wife organised it. My kids tagged along. I went along to the War of the Worlds, the Jeff Wayne version. immersive experience in the good old city of London. And so most of you, I'm pretty sure, on this stream will know about War of the Worlds in its various incarnations. The Jeff Wayne version outside of the UK is probably not quite so well known. It's very well known in the UK. It's actually originally a 1970s LP of sort of 1970s rock and roll music, kind of, which tells the story of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, but it sticks with the original script pretty much, unlike most versions of War of the Worlds, who everyone who ever seems to make War of the Worlds seems to go, you know what we're going to do is we're going to take this story and we're going to change everything about the story. So Glenn, you guys are at fault first, because the Americans took it, Orson Welles, and set it as a radio show and scared much of the population into believing it was actually a Martian invasion, which was quite amusing. And I don't quite know where the Orson Welles version was set, but it was somewhere in America, which of course is not where the Martians invaded originally. Then there was the 1956 film adaptation, again by the Americans, with some pretty good special effects for 1956, actually. Whereas I think the Americans, the Martians decided to invade America again, surprisingly enough. And the Americans tried to nuke them out of existence, and that didn't work very well. Then there, of course, is the double LP Drew. Yes. So I've got my copy as well on vinyl as well. I'm very lovely, a lovely thing it is. So there we go. So that's good. So it was New Jersey, was it? And then every other version of War of the Worlds that's ever been made, not a single one of them has actually stuck with. Was it 1953? Sorry, I knew it was 1950 something. Has never done the original story. Okay. Nobody has filmed H.G. Wells' original story as he wrote it. They've always set it in, mostly in America, it seems, because obviously post about 1940-ish, the all invading aliens in the entire universe always land in America, because it didn't for the Americans. So I don't quite know why that is, and they have a specialism. Actually, we've noticed this on this stream a few times in the past, that all invading aliens have a habit of A, attacking the Americans, and B, blowing up famous landmarks, particularly things on the West Coast. I don't know why. I mean, that's just what aliens do. If you live in a famous, somewhat photogenic sort of American city on the West Coast of America, your odds in an alien invasion are really, really bad. Okay. Eternal Fall 44, the BBC version is pretty close. Well, not really. I mean, I suppose it's kind of set in the right time period, but they did write so much extra stuff into it that just wasn't in the story, and the ending wasn't the same as the original story, and quite a lot of stuff in the middle wasn't either. So, and the aliens kind of weren't the same either. So there's a lot of stuff wrong with the BBC version. I must admit, I did have high hopes for the BBC version, and in my opinion, they blew it. I was a bit disappointed by but I suppose they tried. Trouble is, the problem with the H.G. Wells stories, everybody tries to put their own interpretation on it, which I kind of get. You want to do something new, but the problem is that nobody's ever done the definitive original version. So it's like, why doesn't somebody do that? Because that would be really, really cool, because nobody has done that. If you want to put your mark on it, why not actually film the original version from the book? So that's quite funny. So the one thing about the Jeff Wayne version, now the Jeff Wayne version isn't a film, okay? It's a musical, which I know doesn't sound all that encouraging as a source. But trust me, it works, all right? It does work. So you've got some fantastic music that accompanies set pieces basically from the book. So you kind of have the Martians arriving, laying waste to everything. The British fight back, huzzah! And surprisingly don't do very well. The aliens rather than the amazing sort of American environments where aliens normally invade, like San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York. I know New York's on the East Coast, not the West Coast, but all those kind of big cities. Oh my goodness, they've taken out San Francisco, you've taken out Los Angeles, they've taken out New York. No, in H.G. Wells' original story, the Martians, this overwhelming superior military force from the deep depths of space, at least in the solar system, decide to land in Woking. which is a very nondescript place, to be honest. I mean, sorry if anybody does live in Woking, but it's not exactly the cultural centre of the universe. And I don't think it was the cultural centre of the universe at any time in history. It's a very, very average place. But yet the Martians decided that attacking Woking, that's where we're going to land. We're going to land in Woking, which is like a sort of suburban town on the outskirts of London, that's basically where they launched their tactical strike from. They clearly think it's the way to overtake the British Empire, which of course when the book was written, which is of 1897, it's basically it's all about the British Empire. And yes, the story is an allegory of the British went over to lots of other people's countries and started taking them over with superior weapons, and H.G. Wells basically asking the question, okay, so what happens if somebody comes from space and does that to us? What does it feel like? Which is it's a social commentary. That's what the story is about. But it's also a good fun science fiction novel. But the Jeff Wayne version does stick to the original. Okay, so it doesn't try and change anything. The aliens land in Woking. They land in a cylinder, which of course wouldn't really work. And the cylinder is shot out by a cannon from the surface of Mars, which of course also wouldn't really work. And lots of other things. But they stick with it because it's a good story. Woking is where McLaren are based, and they own part of Horsell Common, do they? Excellent. Well, they should keep an eye out just in case. And so it sticks true to that. And so all the set pieces that are in the book, which are often missing from many of the film productions. So there's a wonderful, wonderful piece right at the end of kind of the first half of the book where they're trying to evacuate the UK actually on the north coast of Kent, which isn't all that far from where I live. And they have a steamer which is trying to evacuate people, and then the Martians turn up and start zapping and shooting everybody with their heat rays. And there's an ironclad warship in the English Channel, which is the only warship there, and it heroically decides to face off with the Martians. So you have this kind of pre-World War One battleship, and they called them ironclads back then, which basically has to face off against the Martians. Of course, the ironclad ultimately is destroyed, but the steamer escapes, and that ironclad is called Thunderchild, and there's an excellent song called Thunderchild, which is in the musical. So. The Jeff Wayne version, the immersive experience, basically is a mix of theatre, VR, and lots and lots of pyrotechnics. Okay, and rather than watching it as a stage show, which it has been produced as, you actually kind of have to take part. So me and my family were subjected to heat rays and things exploding, and having to peer into telescopes to identify stuff. And smuggling ourselves out of Woking through secret passages and across dodgy bridges, and trying to get in a boat and trying to avoid getting shot by Martian heat rays and things while the Thunderchild was firing overhead. Very, 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 very good indeed. So if you do get a chance to go and see the immersive War of the Worlds experience, and you like War of the Worlds as a story, and you particularly like the Jeff Wayne version, absolute thumbs up. It's really, really, really quite good. And there's a few bits in it which are kind of slightly, well, I suppose by modern standards, they're probably mild horror. They're enough to give me a bit of a chill. And I won't do any more spoilers than that. Basically, there are a few situations where you're in a quite unnerving environment, and there's as far as you could tell, there's a Martian kind of moving around somewhere. And it does get quite up close and personal. Let's put it like that. So very, very good, very, very good indeed. And it's full of actors and actresses doing their thing. And if you ham it up a bit with them, they ham it back to you. So It's quite funny because, of course, being an astronomer, there was an opportunity to meet Ogilvy, who is the astronomer in the story, and he was basically saying, "Well, of course, there's nothing coming from Mars. That's absolutely ridiculous." So I sort of started jumping in with, "Are you sure, old chap? I mean, I've heard that there are Martians out there." And he was like, "Don't be ridiculous, you silly fool." And it was all this sort of stuff. So it's really, really quite good. If you, the more you act in the story, the more they do. Yeah, no spoilers for a 100-year-old book, but yeah, thoroughly recommended. I really had a good time. So, you sure there's nothing coming from Mars, old chap? No, it'd be absolutely ridiculous. Well, I've heard rumours that there are Martians. Right? No. So yes, I couldn't resist sort of having it up for the thing. But there we go. Anyway, lovely, lovely to see you all back again. Strategic, yeah. So yeah, quite why the Martians decided that Woking was a strategic point of attack, I'm not quite sure, but now you can actually go and see. Somebody was on the stream a little while ago. Basically in Woking, there is a Martian tripod in the high street. They've actually put one there, kind of as a memory to the great battle that never happened. It's definitely going. It's I don't know if there's anything else in Woking of any significance whatsoever, but one of these days I will go to Woking just to see the Martian tripod. So we'll have to wait and see. The chances of anything coming from Mars are 1,000,000 to 1, but 1,000,000 to 1 chances happen quite often, don't they? That's quite good. So that was quite funny. But and the Plutonians as well. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. So, but I can thoroughly recommend it. And oddly enough, it was in London, just round the corner from where I used to work. So that was a bit freaky as well. So I was going back to there as well. Chris Vikings in here. Hello, Chris. Apologies, you've got to pop out. No worries. And you can watch the video on demand later on. You certainly can. So that's all kind of good. So I suppose the only other ones I've mentioned are Independence Day, which is kind of yet another American version of War of the Worlds, and except it's not called War of the Worlds, it's called Independence Day, which I must admit I really do rather like as a movie because it's just quite good fun, particularly the speech. The best speech by an American president that was never actually real. Although I do remember seeing it in the cinema, and those of you who know that film well will remember this. There's a scene in which, towards the end of the movie, I think, when lots of stuff has been blown up, but the world is trying to fight back, and we're all talking together with Morse code. There's a scene where there's this British, I don't know, camp or something, and they've got a bunch of planes, and they're kind of all sitting there, and one of the guys says, "Oh, it's the Americans." And the British commander sort of goes, "Well, what are they going to do?" And then the chap doing the Morse code is basically going, "They're going to strike back, sir. They're going to strike back." And the British commander goes, "Well, about bloody time too." And I remember seeing that in the cinema in the late 90s, and everybody in the UK audience just falling over laughing because no British person speaks like that. Probably not for about 100 years, anyway. And trouble is, everybody in the entire cinema was just laughing at this point, because of this kind of like American view of what British people are like. So that was quite funny. But other than that, good fun. So that was quite. Independence Day is funny for me since the airbase El Toro was a real marine base that's not 20 miles from me. Okay, wow. And seeing Los Angeles destroyed is very satisfying. Excellent. Now they've turned El Toro Air Base into a big community park and housing. Oh, that's a shame because there should be some aliens or something there. That'd be quite good. But yeah, and Independence Day is kind of War of the Worlds again, but not in Woking, alas. Maybe we should just have a petition. We want to see Woking destroyed in CGI. But never mind. It's all quite good stuff. It's all good. Ah dear. In fact, sometimes in War of the Worlds adaptations, even the Martians aren't there. I mean, there was the one. What was the one with Tom Cruise, which wasn't, in some ways, wasn't a bad movie. Other than there were a lot of things wrong with it in terms of. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Tom Cruise anyway. I can kind of watch him, but he annoys me on some level that I haven't quite defined how. And his version of War of the Worlds, or the version of War of the Worlds that he was starring in, it was called War of the Worlds, and yet we never. The aliens definitely weren't from Mars. In fact, they were buried in the ground from some time before for reasons. I don't think we ever found out where they came from. So it was war against some unknown world somewhere out in space. It'd been a more accurate title. The difference is I don't think anyone cares enough about Woking to want to see it destroyed. Oh, I do. I want to see Woking. Not until I've taken the picture with the tripod. But let's blow up Woking. It's to be targeted. That'd be a strange online petition. Could CGI artists arrange for Woking to be destroyed? Yeah, so Dr. Quest, you're right. Lightning act. I was like, what? Why? Why would aliens bury themselves in the ground to be activated by lightning at a different time? I didn't get that movie at all. I didn't quite know what was going on there. Other than that, it was War of the Worlds, and we knew the aliens were coming and were going to obliterate humans. What? And they sort of rotated that. It was very odd. So yeah, it was something to do with lightning, or they came down in the lightning, or something. I don't know what all that was about. At least with the Martian, you see, H.G. Wells' story. Obviously, he wrote it in 1897. So this is before the invention of flight and stuff. So he was trying to be as future thinking as possible. He did a pretty damn good job, to be honest. If you think about 1897, trying to predict what sort of technologies would be coming. So his Martians were tripod machines. So you have to forgive him for not having flying machines in his in his arsenal of weaponry that he uses in the novel, because there weren't any flying machines. Nobody he hadn't done it, and he kind of he didn't know rocketry, but he understood that to get from one planet to the other, you're going to have to travel in some kind of ship, which is what the cylinders are. And so he did a pretty good job, writing at the tail end of the 19th century, a science fiction novel. I think he did very, very well. The chances of aliens going down by lightning are 1,000,000 to 1. Yep. Commander O'Connor, evening. Sorry I'm late. Are we still waffling? No, we were still waffling at the moment. I'm just recounting my experiences of saving the British Empire from the invasion of the Martians. So, but there we go. Ah, dear. But it was good. I can thoroughly recommend it. And it's just nice to have the original story. And for those of you who do know the music from Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, it's still as good as ever. It's very, very good. And all the good quotes are in there, the 1,000,000 to 1 and the artilleryman with his plan, which is very cool. So it's all very good. That's so Krilikov is a very good point, actually. Is minor spoilers for those of you who haven't read War of the Worlds and know how it ends. I don't think I'm too worried about spoilers, given the book was written in 1897. So it's over 100 years old. So 120 years. Good grief, 20 something years old. So yeah, the ending of War of the Worlds is fairly well known by now, I would hope. And obviously we're saved by it's not our technology that saves us, or our artillery, or any of our guns or anything. We're saved by microbes and viruses and bacteria, aren't we? Jesse, hey, I'm from the Netherlands. Hello, Jesse. Good to see you. Thank you very much for popping in. You're welcome to pop in. It's good to see you, and join in the chat. It's very, very, very informal, as you probably already worked out. We are saved. Humanity is saved by viruses and bacteria and microbes and stuff, which ironically, of course, is the thing that's actually attacked us this time around. So it's kind of a reverse War of the Worlds, isn't it? Dr. Quest MD, I think that with our archaeological efforts, it would be odd that we never found them, and the fact that some were buried underneath cities as well. That was, yeah, that just doesn't really make any sense at all in that version of the movie. I don't know what was going on with the script writers. I do find that, and we talked about that on the stream before in terms of a book. I mean, most books I've read. I mean, I can critique books, and I do. It's kind of instinctive. Once you become a writer, you do tend to critique things quite a lot. It's quite hard to switch the critiquey bit of your brain off now, because you're so used to going, that's an error. Interesting word choice. I think I would have got rid of this piece of description and just cut to the chase. All those sort of things that you do as a writer when you're reading. But most books I've read, I mean, there are some that are atrocious, but most of them are kind of, they're well redeemed by their authors in one way or another. The plot kind of hangs together. It might be a bit thin or a bit obvious in places, but depends what the book's written for and all that kind of stuff. But there aren't usually too many things I find in books that make me go, what? Where's that come from? What are you doing? All that sort of stuff. Whereas in many films recently, and it seems to be getting worse, I don't know if you subscribe to this or not, is that films just seem to go, plot, well, some people like a plot, but most of us, we're fine without a plot. It's absolutely fine. We're just going to have some action sequences and string them all together. That's okay, isn't it? Yeah, sign that off. And you're kind of like, no, hang on, wait. That guy that we just saw, he was doing this thing, and now he's over there doing something else. How did he get from over there to over here? And that thing that they were searching for, why aren't they searching for it anymore? Because, are they just not bothered? Did they forget? What's going on? All these sort of things. And you're kind of thinking, really? The writers signed this off? And you just wonder, because of the number of people involved in the production of a film where it gets chopped and changed so much, that the people who designed the thing at the beginning, by the time the end comes, they don't recognise the thing they were working on either. I don't know. Whereas when you're writing a book, generally, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, you're working on it yourself. And so it's up to you to make it consistent throughout, and you tend to go back and forth and keep checking things until it is consistent throughout, and it kind of makes sense. And I think film production today is so much a committee affair that maybe it suffers as a result. COVID is a protagonist, says Terraphobe. Yes, it is. Interesting, H.G. Wells didn't write War on the Air until 1908. I didn't know that one. I need to check that out. First contact with alien immediately starts coughing in their direction for self-defense. Yes. Hello, welcome to Earth. Have you washed your hands? Science jargon. Jesse 1204. Which kind of genre of books do you write? I'm mostly science fiction and fantasy, Jesse. So those are I have done a bit of contemporary stuff, but it's not really where I find much fun. I'm definitely a bit of a sort of sci-fi and fantasy buff, I suppose. If that helps. Explosions cover the plot. Yeah, there's two. I mean, I know and CGI is really, really clever nowadays, and I'm genuinely impressed what we can do with CGI. But it does seem to have been almost entirely at the expense of plot and acting. What was I watching the other day? Quite an old film. Just trying to remember what it was. I can't remember the title. And I just remember thinking, damn, these guys can act. They can really, really act. There was it was a 60s or 70s film, I think. I can't remember what I was watching, and I was just mesmerised by how good the acting was, because it was paced, and the guys would stop every so often for dramatic pauses, and and their dialogue wasn't, well, we need to get the gizmo to install the installatron and attack the aliens that way. It was much more, we're going to have to come up with a plan. That's not going to work, is it? Definitely not. And it was like, they're actually having a genuine conversation, and they're not just giving me the plot. They're not expositioning the entire movie for me. It's like, I'm having to think, what are these guys thinking about? What are they talking about? What is their plan? Are they going to explain their plan? All these sort of things. And I was like, this is really good. There's no CGI. So, all that sort of stuff. I think most modern day movies have a committee design the story. Too many cooks. I think you could be right. It seems to really suffer from it. We need to have this in the movie. 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 And you've got to make that happen, writers. And the writers are going, but I can't make a decent plot if I have to include all of these things. And I think that must be a really problem. So yeah. So Abana the Wicked says, Drew, the chances of anything. Sorry. Plot. I think you'll find that in the Netflix description. Yeah, but I generally think there are some, there's some issues with mainstream movies in that regard at the moment, because you're just looking at, and you think the poor actors, and there's some of the actors are really good, but you just listen to the sort of drivel that they have to spout, and the plot inconsistency. Why are you doing that? Because about half an hour ago you said you weren't going to do that, and they have to just deliver the lines, don't they? Because that's what they're told to do. Arrival, yes. Now, Arrival is an interesting story. Yes, that one is very interesting. That's a bit more deep, and we're so used to, I think, also movies that explain everything and we don't have to think. Whereas a movie that kind of then leaves us going, "Oh, what's going on here? What's okay?" Makes you think. Is kind of like, "Whoa, I've got to think. Well, I didn't pay for this. That's not what I want." A lot of story, and I like them sometimes. Yeah, it's good not to wrap things up too much and just say, okay, well, what happened at the end there is up to your interpretation. I think that's a valid choice for a movie. So that's quite good. And District 9. So District 9 is one of those that turns the whole, kind of War of the Worlds thing on its head, doesn't it? It's kind of the other way up, which is really good. So there's all sorts of problem with design by committee when the vision of whatever it is that you were trying to put together, just gets cut into segments. Well, it must satisfy this and it must satisfy that, and we're going to change it because people who watched the original didn't like it. In the market testing or whatever they call it, all those sort of things. And I think sometimes the vision gets compromised. And I suppose there's huge focus on merchandising and money and all those kind of things now, and marketing, and appealing to this and appealing to that, and But maybe it's quite hard to stick to your original. I worry for the new June. Yeah. So well, yeah, we've just got to hope it's good, right? I'm still cautiously optimistic, but it is a concern. It is a concern because you've got some very, very deep books there. Which don't need to be this whole we need to reinterpret the story for the 21st century. No, you don't. The story is the story. If you want to write a 21st century story, go ahead and write a 21st century story, but don't take a story out of time and go, hey, we're going to reinterpret it and really annoy all the people who are like the original version. I think Star Trek. Okay. So this is we're getting onto waffle again. Super serious territory. We will get to the topic, I promise. But Star Trek, you see, when something becomes such a big brand, you see, I love the original series, even though it's very, very clunky in 1960s-ish. And I do enjoy the Next Generation. I quite enjoyed Star Trek Voyager, and I quite enjoyed Star Trek Deep Space Nine, though not as much. But once it started. The new Star Wars with the Spore Drive and all that sort of stuff, didn't like it. Not Star Trek. If you want to write something that's modern, then write something new. It's not Star Trek anymore, is it? And the new films, I quite enjoyed the new films, but they didn't feel like Star Trek. They just felt like a kind of odd sort of Star Wars in big spaceships to me. With the names very, very familiar, but it still didn't really feel like Star Trek. Because Star Trek is a certain thing, and if you're, in my opinion, just be brave, write something new from the people who brought you Star Trek. Space Trek, I don't know. Spacewalk, Space Amble, Void Tramp. No, that doesn't sound good, does it? All sorts of things. Just write in, but we have the courage to write something new. And the problem is that, of course, they hang on the brand recognition of the previous shows in order to make money, and that's where it all starts to go wrong, I think, creative-wise. I don't mind. If you own a brand like that, then See, I mean, yes, I did see Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest, in my humble opinion, is the best Star Trek movie never made. Galaxy Quest is absolutely sublime. And the problem, I'm guessing, movie production houses want to go with known success, not something totally new. I think that's very much true. They just don't want to take any risks. They want to sell something that the last thing that was successful. And if you can say it's Star Trek, then all the Trekkies will turn up and go and watch it. Wherever you say it, what's that called? Void Hop. Let's go and watch the new Void Hop movie. The what? Oh, it's a space. Oh, I don't do space. You've got those problems. So I understand that, but I don't know what you can do about it. You just need more. What we need, you see, and I'm hopeful this will happen. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but the way that computer technology is improving all the time. I mean, what I'm doing tonight, I'm sitting in front of a computer with a camera there and some lights and things. And I've got a piece of green screen here, and I'm magically flying through space in front of me. And it's. By modern CGI film standards, that's laughably primitive. But if I showed this technology that I'm using right here, right now, to somebody in, let's say, the late 80s or 90s or even the 70s, they would be like, "Wow, you can do that live from home yourself without a film crew? Are you mad?" So what I'm hopeful for is that the continued advance of technology will allow individual people like me, like you, like anybody who's got a desire to make interactive content of some kind, just be able to do it, from their home studio. If they've got talent, they've got the ability to say, right, I want that spaceship padding in from the left, I want it to land on this planet, I want the planet to look like this, I want these characters to move around, I'll write some dialogue for them, and these AI characters inside the computer can act out my scene for me, and then boom, I can make a film. If that technology is in the hands of individual contributors, people like us, we could have a field day. But it's not quite there yet. You still need a big production team to make a decent movie, but it's getting better. That day that hopefully approaches where we could make our own films. So that would, who knows? But that does sort of obliquely bring me on to my topic. Now, it is a science fiction topic tonight. It's about time. I got to it after 40 minutes of wobbling. Write the next Star Trek or Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, but I see. I don't want to do that. I've been there and done that in a small way with my Elite Dangerous book, and that was a great thing to do, right? To write for somebody else's franchise, and to a lesser extent with Lords of Midnight, which is a fantasy one. But I don't want to do it again. I've decided that it's just too constrictive, and I don't want to do it again because I don't have the creative freedom I want to build things the way I want to build them. I'm literally in the final stages of doing the audio for Shadewood, and it's entirely 100% me. Okay, and I know that for the writers out there amongst you, being able to create your own thing, not having to obey anybody else's rules or regulations, is really, really nice. And having kind of, I suppose, been spoilt a bit by doing that with my own 4-book series, I don't want to not do that again. I want to set the rules. It's my vision. It's the way I want it done, and I want it done at a certain level of quality and a certain background plot, and I want certain lore and all that kind of thing. I want to do it. Okay, it's got to be done my way, because writers are terribly, terribly egotistical, selfish people. So I can appreciate Star Trek and I can appreciate Star Wars, and I like going to see them, but I don't want to write those. I want to write my universe. Okay. So write the next space opera. So oddly enough, that's exactly what I plan to do. I do want to. I'm putting together the outlines of my own space opera, set in my own universe, using my laws and blah 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 blah. So mind, exactly. Yeah, it is easier said than done. Yeah, there's a lot of work. I did it my way. Yes, I did. So I do want to do that, and I will get there. It's on my list of things to do. But the topic I want to discuss tonight, from a science fiction concern, is actually quite mundane. So here you go. Here's some stuff from it. Okay, right, here we go. Ta-da! Storage. Okay, so you might be thinking, huh? Doesn't sound like a very interesting topic, but bear with me, because storage of stuff. We have touched upon this for various reasons. Now, go back to the dawn of computers, right? Okay, so I'm not quite sure what it is. I've not written my Shadewood screenplay yet. No, I haven't. No, I mean the whole screenplay thing is still a mystery. I've got to one day find some time to go and look at screenplays. And then what you do with the screenplay, presumably you submit it somewhere and say, look, I've written a screenplay. I don't know what you do when you've written a screenplay. Do you go, I've written the screenplay? Yeah, presumably you need to somehow to get it in front of people. But yeah, go back to the ancient mist of time, okay, about probably the 50s or the 60s when computers first started emerging into the public consciousness. Computer, I mean, I'd actually probably go back to the Second World War, actually, as the first recognizable types of computers, right? You've got, my dad used to talk about these because he was an electronics engineer. He used to talk about programming computers with rivets. So if you banged a rivet in, well, that's a 1. And if you left a hole, that was a 0. So all that sort of stuff. Command 1210, hello, good to see you as well. So storage, okay. So so back in the 40s, storage is bytes, okay. So literally, the number of things you can store is virtually the number of things you can see, okay. Then there's this sort of exponential growth of storage, which takes a long time to get going. So even by the 60s, you're talking megabytes. And I remember there's a lovely picture of a 20 megabyte drive. I don't know what it is. 20 megabyte IBM drive being loaded into a Boeing airplane. It's like this massive crate. It's like 20 megabytes, which of course, back then was like, wow. Whereas now it's kind of like, huh? You get 3 MP3s on that. Dr. Quest MD, it sounds like an elite question. Question to ponder while we discuss storage. Why does a docking computer take up 1 ton module slot? Yeah, so this doesn't make any sense, does it? Because we can do docking computers on Earth now, which is probably the size of a laptop. Why does it take a ton of space in the future? Who knows? But yeah, so you got 20 megabits, and I remember the first computers I used cassettes for storage, and for those of you who don't know what that looks like, I've actually got it on the wall here. Look, this is my little homage actually to the original Elite and Lords of Midnight. I don't know if you can see that too clearly. There's a screenshot from the game here, and then this is the cassette. Okay, this is the cassette on which the computer game came. So this is pre-floppy disks, although actually kind of contiguous with floppy disks, really, but done for cheapness, particularly in the UK. And computer software used to come on those cassettes, exactly the same cassettes you used to listen to, right? And they would load into your computer. So an average cassette could probably, that's like a C60, like an hour's cassette, for a computer could probably store maybe 200, 300 kilobytes. It's quite serious amounts of storage for your computer to load. And then the floppy disk comes along, and stuff starts to improve. Now, interesting enough, when I had a look at this earlier on. My tapes are wonky. Yeah, they've slipped. I need to fix them. Sorry about that. Bloodyfield, do you have any audiobooks on YouTube I can watch while playing? I haven't got any on YouTube, I'm afraid. That's something I probably ought to look at. No, all my audiobooks are on Audible. So if you look me up on Audible, you'll find them there, but not on YouTube, I'm afraid. And so cassettes came along. Then there's floppy disks. How many of you remember floppy disks? Some of you will. I've still got a floppy disk drive somewhere on one of my. It's a USB one, obviously, but floppy disks were everywhere in the 80s and into the 90s as well. Floppy disks, in the various different formats. They started with the big ones. They progressively got smaller and smaller and smaller. Amanda the Wicked says, I do excellent floppy disk. I always have got one actually. Have I got one in here? I certainly used to have one. I don't know where it is now. I mean, it's obviously useless, but Did my first programming course in 1983. Okay, well that's going back away. Yeah, somebody helpfully pointed out that to me today, the difference between 2021 and 1980 is exactly the same as the difference between 1980 and 1939. I was just like, what? 1980 was just last week. Is the floppy disk actually bendy? Yeah, so the original floppy disks were actually floppy. That's hence the name. They were 8 inches in diameter. I think 8 inches in diameter, or 8 inches in the sort of foldable box. And then there was the 5 1/4 one, which was still floppy but a bit smaller. And then when we went to the 3 1/2 inch ones, which is the one that most people remember, they weren't floppy anymore. But the insides of them were floppy, but you couldn't see them anymore unless you pulled the slidey thing back, which you weren't supposed to do, obviously, to refuel the disk. Windows 95 on floppy disks. There you go. And then you've got like high density floppy disks, and then after that floppy disks start to die out, and then the USB rose. Okay, and then we've got used to SD cards now. I mean, I remember I've still got it here actually. I remember. Let me show you this. It's now a piece of sort of tech nostalgia, but I've still got it. I think it is now defunct. Let me just have a look, because this is an early. There we go. It's an early digital SLR camera, Canon 300D. I should put it on eBay. Really, it's probably worth a fortune. And this uses something which most of you will have probably forgotten about now, but it's compact flash. Who remembers compact flash? There we go. And the thing I liked about compact flash, and there's my compact flash card, was it was very Star Trek. Okay. It's exactly like the things that Mr. Spock used to stick into the thing on the Enterprise. They had those. Do you remember Star Trek got that? The original Star Trek got that really, really, really correct in that sense. It had these. Basically, they were just assume they were just coloured bits of plastic or something like that. I don't know what they were. And he would put them into a slot, and then the computer would go working, and it would read them, right? I remember back in the 90s when I first got one of these, and this was a big deal. It's like that was the first time. That's 1 gigabyte compact flash card, which of course is trivial nowadays. But I remember the first time being able to buy that and go, that is a gigabyte on a single thing, right? Isn't that amazing? Because I'm just looking here, what these ones, these are little ones I've got, these are just consumable stuff, whereas we're now at, look at that, this is a small one, that's a miniature SD card, and what's that one, 32, okay, this is a Samsung Evo 32 gigabyte micro SD card, we're living in sci-fi, okay. Mr. Spock had, I mean, they were bigger on Star Trek, and then there's the whole, storing things in crystals and stuff, all that kind of stuff. Zip disks, says Commander Short. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, zip disks were good, weren't they? Because they were. I don't know what sort of size they were. Don't forget magnetic optical drives, zip and jazz drives. Yes, those were mini discs. Oh, mini discs were awesome. I loved mini discs. I had a mini disc in my car for ages until suddenly nobody. One day I was using them, and the next day I thought I need to get myself another mini disc because I want some more music, and suddenly they were gone. It was just like overnight somebody said, nope, no more mini discs. It's like, they were really good. Why did you get rid of the mini disc? Maybe the shape was inspired by that. I mean, I can just imagine a parallel universe where we still have compact flash and it goes into a slot and the computer goes working. GameCube used 3-inch CDs. Yes, that's true. Storage crystals are everywhere inside. So in science fiction, what's fascinating is it's one of those things that science fiction writers perennially get wrong. Okay, is the storage tech. So if you read even some of the masters like Clarke, Star Trek makes this mistake as well. I noticed there's a lovely episode. We watched it the other day. One of the early Star Trek episodes, the Corbomite maneuver, where they encounter this great big sphere, and it's a test to see if they'll escape. And it's just a guy in a suit basically at the end. But at the beginning of the episode, they are photographing space. And Mr. Spock says something like, "Stand by to photograph," and the guy on the console presses a button. It's like, and there's a sort of noise, and it's like exposure correct. You're like, what? Are you using film cameras? And there's a lot of references in early sci-fi in the 70s and 80s to tapes. The library computer tapes and the record tapes and the film archives. Of course, this science fiction set in quite the distant future where all that stuff should have gone. Of course, the science fiction writers didn't know that film and tape was going to be so short-lived, relatively. But yeah, so we're going cloud-based. Yeah, so Bearded Trio, that's a very good point for our future. Is everything's going into the cloud. I mean, I'm resisting that as much as I can, but it's an inevitable battle, isn't it? Commander Escon's still got a mini disc audio recorder. I'd like one of those. That would be really good. I've still got a mini disc player. Unfortunately, the transport has failed at the moment. I haven't got it. Commander Terrakov has reminded me of a bit that I skipped earlier on, which of course was punch cards. Somewhere I've got a punch card. That's my first job involved programming punch cards. So I am a generation that spans punch cards to these little guys so far. Yeah, so and storage is now so small you can lose a lot. I mean, these things are really easy to I've got like 32 gigabytes on there, everything I've ever recorded in my entire life on a computer, I've pretty much ever since storage got relatively cheap, i.e. you can buy terabytes of disk storage for just a few £100. I never deleted anything ever again. I just don't. I just keep it. I mean, it's mostly electronic junk, of course, but all my email, all my files, everything I generate, my videos and everything, it's several terabytes, but it's only several terabytes, and that's an entire life's work. I've still got emails and files that I created back in the early 90s, from the point at which PCs sort of standardised and I can still read the file formats, although some of them are a bit weird. I've just kept it because there's no point deleting it. So I've got an archive of most of the stuff that I worked on throughout my entire life in digital form that I've just, every time I've got a new computer, I've just copied it across, right? And it's just interesting to see how it's going. So going back to my youth, where you were talking about K on a punch card, and that was the speed of operation. Now I can write in a few hours my entire life's work, everything that I've ever created onto a new disk in a matter of hours. And the capability just gets faster and bigger and faster and bigger and faster and bigger every single time. But it's interesting that science fiction writers get it wrong every single time. So there's lots of, like I said, there's lots of references to photographing things. So not digital, not images, but taking photographs. And there's even a few science fiction films where you see them with a camera. It just looks so odd because nobody uses that anymore. So that's an interesting thing. You see the amount of data being stored is always wrong as well. Even relatively recently, I mean, Star Trek, I'm not quite sure what the exact figures are, but Star Trek The Next Generation, when somebody states the amount of data that data, i.e. the guy, the android data, can store, and how many operations per second he can perform as a 24th century's like super android type thing, it isn't enough. We'll be past that in a few years' time, and it just didn't go far enough. All those sort of things, it's interesting there that science fiction writers always get the technology badly wrong in terms of what we can store and what we do. And the one example always comes back to me, and I'm just as guilty of this. It's not like you can sort of wake up one morning and going, you know what, I'm going to be a science fiction writer who gets this right, because you can't, right? You've got no idea what's coming up. Because I remember very, very distinctly it must have been about 96 or 97, 1996 or 97, when I was reading about MP3s, and the fact that you could digitize a sound file into this sort of portable form. And I remember making an MP3, I think, and I'm pretty sure it was the Bangles' Walk Like an Egyptian. because that's kind of my go-to audio track when I'm testing things out. Just like playing it. It's just a really good song, and I tend to use it to test new audio stuff to make sure it's working. I always play the Bangles' "Walk Like an Egyptian," and I remember digitizing it and turning it into an MP3, and it came out at about 3.5 megabytes or something at 128 kilobits, which is not super quality, but you know what I mean, listenable. And I remember thinking 3.5 megs. Nobody is ever going to use that. It's just way too big. 3.5 megs. I mean, I'd only get about 100 of those on my computer, and the entire thing would be full. Why would anybody want to do that? Oh. And within a few years, personal MP3 players came along, and boom, we understood why, because storage was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's the thing, I think, is that storage expands so quickly, and you can do so much more with it. I mean, the idea of digitally editing videos on my home computer, if you told me that in the 90s, I'd be like, what? Because the amount of space you'd need to do full motion video on a home PC would be ludicrous, whereas it's just common nowadays. Okay, and trying to project that forwards into a science fiction. Okay, what sort of stuff are we going to be able to store, and what kind of things will we be wanting to store? Will we be wanting to store holographic environments? Will we want to be store life memories? And into what sort of media? So we're still having our microelectronic resolution, and you can see the evolution between these two little guys. So that small one is 32 times as big as this one. In terms of the amount of storage space it can handle, and only a few years really separates these two technologies. Okay, but look how this was. I don't know how much this cost me, but it must have cost me a small fortune back in the day. Whereas this is, I don't know, 15 quid or something like that, probably even less. And so both the cost and the accessibility of the stuff has come down dramatically over those years. It's Moore's law, yeah, exactly. So Moore's law is technically, actually, it's not a law, is it? Moore's law. It's just an observation, really, that computing power and I think storage space doubles every few years. I'm not quite sure when it actually is, but so storage is always getting more and more. And and things that would have become kind of like, I mean, my example of the MP3 is, okay, well, you can do it, but why would you want to? It takes up so much space. Suddenly, a few years down the road isn't a problem anymore, and space becomes trivial. So you can do that really weird and wacky thing that would, we would know where you do that because we haven't got the space to store it. Suddenly you can, all those sort of things. Always remember downloading MP3s at 3 megabyte each, and them taking ages, and they're downloading things from the internet. Well, it kind of works, but it takes hours. Why would anybody do that? Suddenly, there's networking speed has increased dramatically, and I think that all that sort of thing. So if you're trying to write, and this is a hard thing. I mean, a general observation about near tech. I mean, we watched Blade Runner the other day, so we could watch Blade Runner 2049 kind of in context, and that's set in Los Angeles. Well, the first one's set in Los Angeles 2 years ago. Of course, the film was made in 1982. And the interesting things about the stuff that they got right and they got wrong was they got all the pollution right. Probably worse actually in the film than in real life. But flying cars again. Where's my flying car? That's the thing. And but yet the computers they use still using CRTs, which just look really, really wrong. And kind of really, really low-res digital displays and all those kind of things. Interesting that all that sort of tech isn't correct. And and I think we've observed it again today, is modern science fiction has just gone for freestanding holograms everywhere. Every single TV show that's set in the near or immediate future has freestanding freestanding holograms. Every single one, without exception, almost. Unless it's a sort of retro sci-fi show. It's like now that we've got flat screens, the next stage is freestanding displays, and every show has them, and they're becoming kind of just so ubiquitous that there's no imagination going on there anymore. Is that a genuinely good display technology? I'm not convinced it necessarily is. I wonder if that the one show that doesn't do that actually is things like Battlestar Galactica, where they kind of shy away from some of that high tech stuff deliberately because it's a military ship. That's right. Feather of the Crow, Blade Runner might have very low res screens, but they have extremely high res photographs. They do. Because the guy does that, that whole zoom and enhance thing. He's zooming and enhance down to a piece of the photograph that's probably only 1 grain of film wide and still manages to pull a woman's face out of it. It's like, really? What? At some point, is there a reason to go smaller with it? Well, I must admit, these are, to be honest, these are now on the limit of, because, I've, as I'm getting older, my eyesight isn't quite as good as it used to be. That said, I know it says, you can probably see that clearer than me. I know that says Samsung Evo 2. In fact, I can see it clearer on the screen now than I can in real life. I don't know what else it says on there. I can see Samsung, I can see 32, and I can see Evo. Oh, it says Plus. I don't know what it says underneath that. In fact, I'm not even sure those are actual real letters there. But it's virtually at the limit of my being able to see it. It's like, and if that gets any smaller, how much smaller can that get? And it's still a practical thing to actually use. It's very, very, very small indeed. Maybe the form factor is now at the point where I'm just waiting for my camera to focus again. Hello, I'm here. I'm no longer holding something in front of you. You can refocus. It's okay. Come on. Stupid technology. Anyway, hopefully I will swim into focus in a moment. The cameras. Come on. Nope. And Glenn says, actually, I love what you did in your starting story, and I was conscious where the kids make fun of the flat screens. Yeah, because kids make fun of old tech, don't they? Until it becomes retro cool in some fashion. Come on, camera, stop messing about. Maybe it can't detect me. Maybe I need to kind of zoom in to the point I am focused, and then zoom out slowly, and it goes, aha, picked you up. There we go. That's the way to do it. It's a romantic blur. It's a sort of soft focus. Yeah, needs a nice vignette around the outside. So it's Star Trek. Apart from the main view screen, other screens were CRTs. Yeah, they were. So that's why it's soft focus, I think. So yeah, I don't know. Where is storage tech going? That's a question I'm not really qualified to answer. But it can't get physically much smaller because it's just going to lose it, or it's going to get sucked up in the Hoover. When do you stick that 6 trillion gigabyte hard disk? Oh damn! I think I dropped it on the floor this morning, but I've hoovered since then. Oh no! Don't get my drive. It's going to be a problem, right? Because it can't get that much smaller. You're going to lose it. And I'm pretty sure in my house I must have lost some SD cards. I'm pretty sure I must have done, because they are just very, very, very small. So I don't physically. I hope they don't get too much smaller. But storage capacity, they're going to. What's the biggest? I don't even know. The biggest disk drive I've got on my computer and then my computer is by no means state of the art. How much does that hold? Let me just look it up. But the disk drive in my computer is a 2 terabyte drive. Okay, to 2 terabytes. I've got a spinning disk, so it's old school tech. I've got some SSDs in there as well, but I've got a 2 terabyte drive. Now I don't know what the biggest hard disk you can get today, or the biggest SSD you can get, but it's going to be several terabytes, right? Now, in a few years, we're going to have several terabytes on these things, aren't we? You can probably already buy a terabyte one, as far as I know. I don't know where to get it. And then I can carry around. Once it gets to a few terabytes, my entire life's work will be on one of these, which is slightly depressing in one way, but pretty cool in another way. What are we going to do with that? Okay. And then there's all that. So quantum, esoteric, some of that esoteric tech, quantum computing, and all that kind of stuff, and light-based computing rather than relying on electrons and kind of things. Alan says, I remember a 40 megabyte disk. Yeah, I remember megabyte disks being a big deal.
And M2 SSDs are very small. Yeah, they're they're not actually that much bigger than the old compact flash, are they? I've got some of those in my computer. They're very small. So so that's going on and on and on and on and on. And for sci-fi, so what I do admire is science fiction that tries to extrapolate using some sensible logic. So for example, if we can store real-time video today, which simply wasn't an option years ago on a computer in digitized form. Today we can do real-time video and very complicated stuff. In the future, our network and storage capacities are going to be such that we can stream instantaneously an entire life's work of stuff, or some much more complicated, high-definition things, and interact with them in kind of weird and wonderful ways. Now, I remember this conversation about high-speed networking back in the 90s. When I started out, I served my apprenticeship in the late 80s, and one of the first things I worked on was a pre-broadband high-speed networking system called ISDN, and some of you may have heard of ISDN, and it was kind of a precursor to broadband. And it could operate up to 128 kilobits per second, which was pretty darn fast back then. I remember, we were working on this digital high-speed networking thing called ISDN, and I remember at the time thinking, damn, this is good, but it's not fast enough to transmit, video in real time. It just doesn't have the bandwidth to do it. Okay. You could do it in small, low resolution. You couldn't, without lots and lots of compression, you couldn't do, good quality video at high. It wasn't fast enough. It just simply didn't have the bandwidth. And I remember thinking at the time, damn, won't it be impressive when we can broadcast full motion television across a network, at decent resolution. I remember thinking, wow, that's got to be some point in the future. Of course, just a few years down the line. Commander Terekoff and Wintermute used ISDN. Yay! We used to when I was working on it, we used to call it the Integrated Singing and Dancing Network, because it was supposed to kind of replace everything. ISDN was going to be awesome. What's ISDN? You don't need to know what it is. It's just going to be great. So it was the Integrated Singing and Dancing Network. And then the other acronym, because it was basically, what's ISDN? I sure don't know. But it was one of the first times I remember being exposed to a new technology that was kind of emerging and kind of was pushing things forward, but it wasn't pushing them forward far enough. And that's the thing. So, in your sci-fi novel, so this is one thing I've not had to wrestle with, because you can avoid the subject completely. The guys can, the adventurers in your story can just do. Yeah. So, Alan, ISDN was only 64 kbits per second, unless you had a double, because you could have, what you could do is you could have two ISDN channels and multiplex them. Then it gave you 128. Because I know how to do that. Well, I did know how to do it. That's it, single channel speed. So if you had a dual channel, you could multiplex them, which is what I did a lot of. That was quite good. And so your protagonists and antagonists in your story, storage is a small element of science fiction, but it's in some ways, if you want to, take classic examples, like we want to steal the plans to the Death Star. Okay. Now I'm assuming the plans to the Death Star are going to be pretty big, right? Because you're talking about the blueprints for the construction of something that's the size of a moon, right? Or a small asteroid, at least. So I don't know how complicated the plans for the Death Star are, but they must be fairly complicated. But if all they are is architectural drawings and measurements and inventories of parts and all that sorts of things, the Death Star plans, maybe they're terabytes in size. Does anybody know how big the plans are? Because one of the things you notice in the Rogue One is how long it takes them to upload the Death Star plans. Now, obviously, the Death Star, there's certain bandwidth on planet to space station operations. Don't know what that is in Star Wars. But obviously in a sci-fi setting, you need a certain amount of tension as the thing's uploading, right? So it's going to take a few minutes to upload the thing to the space station. Okay, right. So we've got to hold them off for a few minutes. It's that tension piece around the storage. Slightly, very stupidly parodied, I think, in Independence Day when they have to upload a virus to the alien mothership. It's just one of the most stupid pieces of sci-fi tech I think I've ever seen in a film. It's like, okay, so the alien spaceship from a completely different completely different technology happens to have an interface that is Mac compatible and looks like it uses USB actually. You're kind of going, all the IT people in the cinema are going, you what? The alien spaceship is USB compatible. Or macOS compatible, and we can put a virus into their computer without knowing anything about their computers at all. It was just that was crazy. So actually that's a very good point, Bearded Trio. The low res 3D holograms. I quite like the style of those, but they are low res, aren't they? So you can kind of see the scan lines or the pixels, whatever it happens to be. Chris, it's just slowness for the sake of tension. So we've got to hold them off while the thing loads or unloads or decrypts or whatever it is that the storage thing has got to do for the plot. Is I think is one of those things that you can take a little look at and go, can I make this better? So sometimes you need storage, and I've noticed that in Elite Dangerous actually with some of the ground missions. Just to note that one, I think there's various places where you can get encrypted data of various different types in the game, and you have to sort of stand by the console while it downloads it to your own portable drive, and it's it seems to take an inordinately long time to download something which can't be all that big. And you're kind of like, why isn't this virtually instantaneous? There is a backstory. Oh, is there? Being the true, there's a backstory to the reason why the alien ship is Apple compatible. A scene I think was deleted. And apparently Apple machines were based on a crashed alien ship from the 40s. Okay. That's quite a good explanation, actually. And the aliens only had low-speed FTP. And the aliens don't have a firewall, they don't have any virus scanning, nothing, It's like, are you sure? Terrible Wi-Fi range. And the thing is that you know what the limitations of technology are today, don't you? But you also know what it is also capable of. So I mean, the security thing is the one thing that drives me mad, because my day job has always been in information security, right? So I've spent my entire career telling people to change their passwords and adhere to the password policy, and lock your computer when you step away from it, and switch off your computer and secure it with a password when it's off. All those things, right? In fact, don't leave printouts lying around. Encrypt things when you send them through the email. All those sort of good security practices. Okay, now that's just today, let alone in the future. And it just winds me up really badly when the security and all of these things is just stupid. And it's like, it's all, and it goes back up to all the classic old dodges, doesn't it? Like, okay, so the prisoners are standing in the corner over there talking to each other, and we're happy with that. Don't separate the damn prisoners, otherwise, because they're coming up with a plan, aren't they? Stop them talking to each other. It's like, and the one that really, really annoys me is when the protagonist comes into the baddie's computer, and it's basically got password prompt on the screen. And they take a look around the room and go and they spot a picture on the wall or something and go, it's a dog, and they look at the other wall and there's another picture and it's the family. And you pick out the youngest son who's called, I don't know, Fred. And then in front of them there's a post-it note with wife's birthday. You go, what's his birthday? Oh, it's the 22nd. Okay, so dog, Fred, 21. Tap 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 tap. Ding, password accepted. It's like no. Can't do that. I work in web dev and database management. Yes, I can see some user password. I know. I mean, people are very lazy when it comes to passwords. But even still, the idea that you can walk up to somebody's computer in the 24th century, it just works, is it's really wrong. Yeah, Ready Player One, lots and lots of movies. You know, security is always appalling on all science fiction environments. You know, you can walk into a building without showing a pass card. You know, nobody challenges you. You know, there aren't user IDs and passwords. I mean, the one that makes me just scratch my head and go, huh? On the Elite Dangerous one is that you actually you if you want to assassinate somebody in Elite Dangerous in the new version of the game, you go to the base where there's a computer, and you don't even have to log in. You know, the computer just gives you access anyway. And then you can cycle down a list of people who work at the base, find your assassination contact, click on their name, and then it will tell you where they are in real time. It's like, I think there should be some data protection in the far future, really, because that's you know, I know it's a game, but even so, very, very, very bad security. Yeah, the first person somebody got assassinated in the Elite Dangerous universe, somebody should be going, you know, that computer system we've got makes it really easy for strangers to come in and assassinate people. we should probably do something about that. You know, all that sort of thing. And R2-D2 takes a while to shut down. So yeah, technology, I think it's very, very hard, actually, overall, to make it feel authentic. There's no GDPR. It got revoked. Yay! Alan RP2 once walked into an industrial site, went to the control room, read some data from a screen, and left again without mooting anyone. See, that's appalling, isn't it? That shouldn't happen. See, I quite admire movies and books where they try to get it right, like basically, because you know, if you get a password wrong a few times on a computer, what the computer should do is the computer should go, someone's trying to break in and they don't know what the password is, so actually I'm going to lock them out and say, no, I'm not going to take any more passwords for another hour, which of course doesn't make for good tension, but it's definitely realistic. You know, so that sort of stuff. You know, so technology is usually badly portrayed, and if you know anything about a particular type of technology, you're usually kind of pulling your hair out at the computer screen when they're in science fiction. The one, the Star Trek one always gets me is how they can interface with anything. You know, some alien tech. You know, Mr. Spock can take a quick look at the user interface, which is of course completely different. Well, you know, the Next Generation does this as well. Geordie, can you just access their later logs? Yeah, sure, Captain. I'll just download their latest log. How do you know they've even got logs? I mean, there's a keyboard design here which you've never seen before, and yet somehow, because you're a 24th century dude, you can read it somehow. How? Real life car security is pretty. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's right. The old override. Oh, okay, yeah. We've typed the word override, so obviously you should be allowed in. So yeah, so there's all sorts of weird things, which some of them have to be. I get that, you know, some of them have to be there in order to make the story or the game or the film work. But there are films that, you know, think just take it a little bit more serious, and I certainly intend to try and make sure that the way that data, computers and technology are portrayed is actually, you know, is kind of realistic and doesn't sort of self-defeat things. So, you know, if you have a situation where your computer security is totally and utterly lax, then, you know, people would stop using it, people would falsify it, all those sort of things. You know, so there have to be kind of pros and cons. Override, isn't that just sudo? Yeah, sudo. But you know, so I wonder, you know, going back to storage tech again for a bit, I wonder what sort of things that we will be wanting to store in the near-term future. So you've got kind of whole environments, I suppose. If you think about VR and holographic stuff, as you add in more dimensions, you're going to be increasing the amount of stuff that you want to store. That's going to be interesting. 20th Century Dude, that famous song by Dru-ids. Drew, have you read the Shockwave Rider by John Bruner, written in 1975? It's where the term worm program comes from. Okay, no, I haven't. I'm going to have to look that one up. I will archive that bit of the chat. I'll go and check that one out. I don't mind having technological face-offs between things. Computers and other bits and pieces have always been done badly by science fiction. Even interesting enough, if you look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, the idea of a sentient AI and things like that are interesting. And you've got, I think, even in those sort of films, you're referencing hologrammatic storage or molecular storage and things like that. So that's quite interesting. Any tech experts or speculators think there is a limit where we can't go or store more data? I mean, I suppose at the moment we've got a fundamental. You've got a fundamental limit at a quantum level, haven't you? I mean, you could probably store data atomically, and that would certainly be pretty dense. I mean, how many atoms are there in something that small? It's quite a lot of atoms. So if you can make unique configurations of atoms at a read-write sort of level, I think you've probably got plenty of space. But the things that we do tend to fill up that space, quite quickly, because we just demand more complexity, more realism, and more speed, and all those kind of things. Dr. Quest MD, I remember Lost in Space movie had a throwaway moment when they were opening the door to the ship from the future, and they asked why the Major was concerned. He just said nothing was wrong, it was just running too damn fast. Storage is still two-dimensional. That's a very good point, actually. It is, yeah. So I mean, they have experimented with three-dimensional storage arrays like this, but they tend to get too hot, apparently, because there's not enough separation between the different layers, and the moment you make a 3D cube, you run into the problem of heat dissipation, all that sort of things. Terminator, the T8000's chip was a tad small, I always thought. Well, maybe it looked like that back then, but nowadays it almost looks too big again, because we're getting used to so much storage information in very, very small spaces. I always quite like the idea of, and you see it in some of certainly in the sort of 50s and 60s movies, they always use crystals, don't they, to store information. I'm not quite sure how crystal storage is supposed to work, but you could pick up a crystal which would normally glow nicely in the dark, and then you would slot it into a slot on a machine or a console or something, and then that would be your storage crystal, and it would have an indeterminate amount of storage, presumably quite a lot. So that whole kind of lighting up crystal thing was quite common back then. What's the next unit up from a terabyte? It's a petabyte, isn't it? So presumably 1,000 terabytes is a petabyte. I think it won't be long before the petabyte becomes a common, storage number that we're beginning to bandy about. Terabytes for quite a long time will go like, ooh, a terabyte, whereas now a terabyte is fairly common, and it will just keep going. The smallest we can go with physical media is dictated by uncertainty principle. Yeah, I was going to say that's right, Jalen. Ignore that stuff doesn't work because electrons tunnel into places they shouldn't go. So you do have a fundamental limit, but if you could write down to the atomic, say these things that small, if you could write down to the atomic level on those kind of things, that would be an awful lot of atoms. Then of course the problem comes with finding the data and access. How fast can you get to that data, read and write that data? Those are other considerations, the read-write access speed. That was always one of the problems with tape. If you go back into the dim and distant past, is that tape actually had a lot more storage capacity than the floppy disks of the time. But of course you didn't have any random access, so you couldn't get to it quickly. So if the thing that you wanted was at the wrong end of the tape, you'd have to wait half an hour. The thing fast forward through. Now you don't have those sort of problems, but read, write, access, and speed to find the data is another thing. The other thing I think is going to be interesting is the indexing of the data. Now I don't know about you, but I've got a massive library of photos, right? And if you're anything like me, you've made a half-hearted attempt to try and categorize your photos. Because when you take photographs off a digital camera, they're helpfully simply labeled as something like image underscore 0 1 2 3 4 5, right? It's like that's 1 2 3 4 5 to 17593 are your is your summer holiday, and then 18926 for onwards to 20,385 is kind of like Christmas or something like that. And of course all you've got is these awful file names, and it's like how do you categorize this data into a meaningful way? Because if what I'd like to be able to do to my PC is, right, show me pictures of my life between where I'm in the picture with my car, and in a country location between 1988 and 1999. Show me pictures that fit that category. Okay, so you need but it can't do that. Okay, you need metadata along with the stuff that you're storing in order to be able to search in that sort of fashion. And the more stuff we store, particularly if we're storing terabytes of information, high resolution images, videos and stuff, unless there's metadata or some way for the computer to create some metadata around the thing that you're storing. The fact that you might, I've got loads and loads of stuff on my computer, I can't find any of it. All that sort of stuff, right? I know that's a lot of pictures, my numbers are very bad. And Google's working on this sort of stuff, and that's another piece of technology, which, in a sci-fi universe, I think you can take advantage of. It's a little bit sort of CSI Miami with zoom and enhance, but show me images of the spacecraft between these two dates where the spacecraft has got its weapons deployed, and the AI is smart enough to be able to answer that question. So I think you can play around with things like that as well. Do you have metadata and AI involved in the retrieval and indexing and searching of the stuff that's been stored? And where is stuff stored? Can I carry with it? Can my protagonist carry a certain amount of storage with them? How much? And what sort of stuff can be stored? And I've got loads of pictures on film. So that's another problem. I can search my phone pics from keywords which the phone adds automatically. That's okay. So, Commander, surely, how does the phone add them automatically? I mean, that's so it's all. I can never find photos because I don't index, and I'm not very good at doing that because it takes time, right? Better things to do that. Right, this photo was me doing the. It's like, 6 billion photos later. The archaeologists from the future, to think our predecessors dug around the dirt for a bad pottery, and we have a wealth of images from everyone around the world cataloguing important life events and their cats. So, interesting enough, the number of UFO sightings has dropped dramatically with the invention of the mobile phone. There's an interesting observation. UFO sightings peaked in the 60s and 70s, and then they've gone on a dramatic decline since, because actually got made of much more available cameras, and then just not showing up. So unless the great alien reconnaissance of the Earth was completed by the end of the 70s, just in time for digital cameras to come to existence, it's a bit of a shame we missed them. Man vs. Pixel. I saw a video from professional F1 photographer. He was using software to add metadata. So I think you can do it manually if you are really organised and you're really on the case. That kind of makes sense. But for people who aren't quite so organised, I'll just dump them in that folder. I know roughly what they are. So in the UK, teenage pregnancy has fallen since the invention of the phone as well. That's interesting. Okay, so not just Google. So AI is another thing. Is obviously that's AI isn't quite the sort of sentient computer intelligence that we thought it was potentially going to be, and we were worried about in the 70s and 80s. But AI can do some quite surprising things, can't it, in terms of wheedling things out. So Commander O'Connor is one of these very organised people. Good for you, Commander O'Connor. I'm not as organised as you. I'd like it to be able to do that for me itself, which would be very cunning. What did they download? What did they eat 2,000 years ago? Let me just download the photo from the archive. all those sort of things I think would be quite cool. And how much information? Because I mean, this is an interesting point. Everything nowadays is digitized. So I have I mean, it's full of really really awful puns and bad jokes mostly. A few car pictures and the odd picture of my family. But if my Facebook and Twitter feed are ever archived for posterity, somebody will have an incomplete but at least slightly revelatory timeline of things that I did in my life. Which and it's interesting. My dad died back in 2012, but he had a Facebook account for a number of years, which I've got access to it. Which he didn't use Facebook for very long. I think only about 3 years, but he did use it, and so there's a snapshot of a small piece of a life there. And as we get old, people coming onto Facebook now, or Twitter or any other social media, we are storing a catalogue of many people's life experiences, and most of those are very mundane and not particularly interesting. But as a sociological experiment for an archaeologist in the future, I can imagine that would be quite a rich tome of information to analyse. And look for things in, which is an opportunity that's never ever been presented to any kind of analytical organisation before in the entire history of the planet. And AI, Elon Musk claims that AI will be the downfall of humanity. That's going to be interesting. I can't wait for personal AI. I'm going to have so much time. Well, I must admit, I do enjoy talking to Commander O'Connor's Alexa nefariously on my stream. And saying things like, Alexa, would you like some toast? I don't know if he's still on. He's probably shouting at me now. So So I mean, AI is quite limited still, but so sorry, Commander, I just can't resist. But AI is going to add complexity to all those other things and change things around. But it's not just the amount of storage space we're going to have; it's the sort of things that we can store. So go back to early computers. All we can store is a bit of text. Then we can start storing a bit of image. Then we can start storing videos. But now we can store things like complete sociological records of a person's sort of interaction with other people. So you can sort of, somebody looking at my Facebook feed history. Let's say for some reason I'm a person of interest in 100 years' time. They look through my social work. They'll be able to construct a pretty accurate, rendition of the things that I considered important enough to write about. Which videos I uploaded onto YouTube, the sort of things I said on Twitter and Facebook, and more importantly, who was connected to me. She's off now. Poor old Alexa's been killed because of Drew. But they could construct literally a social network of Drew Wager and the people he interacted with, and where were they and what were they doing, and then you could string all these things together. Now what can you do with that information? All sorts of potentially things. You're storing that sort of stuff, and you're storing that in different places. And many people have already mentioned the cloud. Okay, so nowadays we're being encouraged more and more and more not to have personal copies of our data, but to have it accessible to us over network devices and who knows where it's actually being stored and what it's being concatenated with, all that sort of stuff, and online services. Or don't do it by paper, do it online. All this sort of stuff. So that's the reason for the waffle. Actually, I'm trying to throw off the AI. So we're not just storing kind of discrete things like bits of text, bits of video, bits of film, bits of images. You're starting to store complicated in order to reconstruct that's going to be quite an interesting thing. So where does that leave you for a sci-fi novel? I mean, can you extrapolate forward from being able to store your entire life's activities? I mean, how much bandwidth would that take? I mean, what do I, on an average day, what do? I get up, I have some breakfast, I'll go and walk the dog. Actually, no, I walk the dog before breakfast. I walk the dog, have breakfast, load the dishwasher. It's all very exciting stuff. I'll go and check my emails. I'll plan my day's work. I'll go and do some work. I'll stop for lunch. I'll watch a TV program. I'll have a chat with my wife. Then we'll go and make a cup of tea. I'll go back to work, finish the work. Then it's sometimes we take the dog for another walk, depending on what's going on. Then we cook dinner, then we watch a bit more TV, then we have a brief chat, then we get to bed, and then we sleep, and then we get up and do the same thing again. And that's Monday, because Mondays are exciting. It won't be long before all of that activity could potentially be stored. Somehow, not quite sure how it would be done, but you could potentially store it. And as storage space increases, it will become increasingly trivial for us to store our entire life's activities. So if you wanted to, I reckon, in a few short decades from now, maybe even the next generation, say my kids' children, they will be able to record every single thing that they do in excruciating detail. Glossing over the privacy concerns and all those kind of things for a moment, I think you'll be able to store your entire life's activity in a system of some kind before too long. What does that mean? I mean, the vast majority of it is going to be exceptionally dull, but what does that mean? We're already having problems with privacy and doxing and all those kind of things that the internet and social media has brought along. What sort of other problems and issues are being stored up for us when we can digitize our entire activity, everything? And that's before we start talking about plugging things into our brains and extracting our dreams and our visions and recording what we see for our eyeballs and all that sort of stuff. There's lots to think about. Chris Viking keeps backups of stuff. So I tend to use the cloud as a backup mechanism. It's a kind of fail-safe for everything else. Could you have, could there be a technological treatment for Alzheimer's or things like that, where you actually know here are all your memories, they're all backed up, go and enjoy them again. Or you can, our memories aren't perfect, right? So that meeting I had back in 2002 with that guy, I'm just trying to remember what was going on. Oh, hang on, just access the backup recording of that. I mean, just imagine the legal. You said you'd do this. What do you mean I said I didn't say that? Yes, you did. Look, here's the recording. Oh, damn. All those sort of things. Feather of the Crow. It's not. That's a very good point, actually. It's not just what we're able to restore that's important, but also how casually your sci-fi character would do so, not even giving it a second thought. So you've got to. That's a very good point, because you mustn't explain the tech in the book. Okay, it's just got to be a given. Okay, because your characters will just be using it like we use an SD card. If I show you one of these, I don't need to explain you that that's a digitized memory chip, with the thing you're thinking, and you insert it into a slot and it will mount its file system, and it usually uses FAT32 for convenience. You don't do any of that. Okay, it's just copy it onto the SD card for me, and I'll suck it off and put it on my PC. That's what we say. Okay, we all know what that means. And in the future, whatever the tech is, your characters will just say, "Oh, just ping me the whatever the words are you decide to say. Ping me the entire life's thing, and give me the 2002 extract, or whatever it happens to be." They'll just say that. It'll just happen. The technology, you don't need to explain how the technology works. But you, as the author, might have to do the thinking of it. How does this technology work? What can you do with it? What sort of problems can I create as a science fiction novelist around this kind of technology? It was you need the films with memo ray from Futurama. Yeah, so the comedy ones often do it better, don't they? It was the X day of the X month, and 14 birds were flying past the window, because that information was stored. You gods, if they get to read my dreams, I could get into serious trouble. And we do. Alan's quite right. We often remember things incorrectly, and we'll swear blind that we remember them correctly, because that's how fallible our memory is. So, if every meeting was digitised from the perspective of the people in it, I mean, that would be quite interesting to see. It was covered in an episode of Black Mirror where everything the characters witnessed was recorded and could be replayed. Yeah, so I think that's a technology that might not be all that far away. The rise of cameras, and it's interesting to look at mobile phones. Now, where's my mobile phone? I probably left it downstairs. My mobile phone's about 3 years old. It's a Samsung S something 9, I think, and it's got a single camera on the back, and it's a perfectly decent camera. For a mobile phone camera, nothing particularly clever. A few dozen megapixels, etc. But my son has just renewed the contract for his phone. He's got a Samsung A30 something. Anyway, I don't even know what the serial numbers mean. But you look on the back of this camera on this phone, and it's now got 4 cameras on it. It's got a wide-angle camera, a normal camera, a telephoto camera, and that, God knows what the 4th one's for. So this phone is now capable of taking all sorts of, and it's also got a front-facing camera as well. So I suppose it's got 5 cameras, and the number of cameras. Okay, so now that a phone needs 5 cameras, right? And that's I'm sure you can beat that somewhere else. The integration of cameras themselves just into kind of literally everything. I mean, I've now put a camera in my car because of insurance purposes. And Teslas, I think, have like loads and loads of cameras, monitoring all sorts of aspects of the car for things. So the number of cameras that are in operation nowadays is absolutely vast and going up dramatically, so that all sorts of angles and all sorts of footage can be filmed. Not filmed. Filmed's exactly the wrong word. Digitized. The amount of data that we can capture about movement and where people go and what they do and stuff, because of all these cameras that we're buying and adding onto phones. That again has got to have implications, even in the near future. I think it might have been a 52. Yes, you might be right, Wintermute. A camera to take pictures of your soul. Yeah. Chris Viking says there's a Futurama episode in which Professor Farnsworth points to a big ray gun towards his head and goes, don't do it, Professor. And it turns out it's an invention called a memory, which allows basically perfect recollection of a memory. And he talks about the specific day and month and says that a specific had birds. There you go, that's it. So wouldn't it be, imagine that there was a technology like that. They could basically say, right, show me what I would have seen, or show me what I saw on the 21st of January 1982. And security cameras in homes can be hacked with embarrassing results. Yes, that's right. Well, security, just in general terms, that becomes a big issue with all this. The amount of surveillance is incredible. Camera tech on phones is improving rapidly, and still, I'm always having a go at my family. Actually, don't film it in portrait; it looks awful. In landscape, they get fed up with me talking about it. I'm always telling them to film in landscape. I completely sympathise with you on that one. Just a huge increase in number of cameras, and therefore the storage and blah blah blah. What can we have to do with it? So I don't know. I mean, it's again a topic that I think is worth thinking of for your sci-fi novel. I don't think it really applies to fantasy so much, because in fantasy you can just kind of magic it away. And that's not a concern. But for sci-fi novels, what can you do with that technology, and what does it mean? I think is an interesting one to have a little play around with. Show me what I saw Jan 22, 2033. Yes, there's going to have to be some filters, aren't there? Yeah, not that date. I remember that date. Don't ever show this again. Yeah. Good stuff. Right, my friends, it is time to depart once more. So I hope that's given you grist for your mill of writing and thinking, right, I'm gonna have a hypercube transport storage system which can access all my memories, and see where that takes me with my writing exploits. But my whole life just played before my eyes. It was really boring, says Dr. Quest MD. That's the trouble, is most of it is going to be pretty boring, because, I mean, let's be honest, our lives are not spectacularly interesting most of the time, are they? I mean, today, like I said, I got up, I walked the dog, I had some breakfast, which is what I normally do. Then I had a coffee. Then I checked my emails. Then I did some work. Then I stopped for lunch. Then I had some lunch. Then I had a cup of tea. Then I did some more work. I checked my emails. Then my son came home from work with a problem with his car, so I helped him fix his car. Then I went and did the stream, which is very interesting. But and then I'll probably go to bed, and I'll go to bed reading a book, and then I'll repeat it very, very similarly the following day. Alas, most of us don't lead incredibly interesting lives, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the boring stuff is interesting. Who knows? Anyway, take care, my friends. I will see you again on Thursday. And that will be for more No Man's Sky. And Saturday, hopefully, I'll be able to continue on with my my adventures in Wing Commander, which actually was quite good. I was quite impressed how good that game was. So until then, carry on, my friends. Chris Viking had a nap. If they played my life back most days, and I think that's the same for everybody. I don't think most of our lives are all that interesting, are they? But anyway, there we go. Lovely to see a few new faces. Well, not faces, but names in the chat. Even some of them I could pronounce. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us, and see you on Thursday if you're in for No Man's Sky. See you on Saturday if you're up for Wing Commander, and obviously we're back here on Mondays evenings as well to talk sci-fi and fantasy. So take care, my friends. Have a good writing week ahead of you, and I will see you soon. Be good and right on. See you soon.